Welcome to New York Got Game.
We're back with another edition of New York Got Games. Your boy Dexter Henry here. Start of Black History Month. Happy Black History Month to everybody out there. Interesting time for the Knicks and the Nets. We're going to focus on both teams this week on the show. Trade deadline coming up on Thursday. Plenty to get into. And I'm really excited about both of my guests because myself and my guests on this week's episode all have a very special connection. So let's get right into it.
The Knicks are heating up.
So the Knicks recently have been playing some good basketball. They've won 5 out of their last 6 games, but fans might focus on what happened in their last game against the Los Angeles Lakers at home, which was not good for the Knicks as they lost 128-112 to the Lakers. But coming up this week is the NBA trade deadline. As I mentioned, what will the Knicks do with the trade deadline? How can they improve their team? Will they improve their team? There are so many questions that we have to answer, and I'm glad to answer them this week with a guest who I've been wanting to come on with me for quite some time. She is a fellow Brooklynite, fellow alum of the best high school in Brooklyn, that is Clara Barton High School. She is the host of Dope Soul Sports Talk. Her name is Stephanie English, and she joins me now. Stephanie, how you doing?
I am doing very well. Thank you so much for the opportunity to chat about the Knicks with you.
No, I'm glad. You're one of the best Knicks content creators out there. I'm really glad to have your voice here and talk about the Knicks. But Stephanie, I got to ask you, because the Knicks, as I mentioned, they've won 5 out of the last 6 games. They've been playing some pretty good basketball, though they lost to the Lakers on Saturday night. What have you made of their play overall during this stretch, during this homestand, where they've played some of the best teams in the West?
I'm actually very encouraged. Very encouraged. I got good vibes about this Knicks team, but I was very concerned about their defense. Like, they have a top offense, but you can't have a top offense and a 16th, 17th, 18th ranked defense and expect to win a championship, in my opinion. So I said the Knicks need to move that defense up 10, 12, somewhere in there. And over that 5-game win streak, they were actually 7th, I believe, in defensive rating, though defensive rating is not the end and be all. But and with the Lakers, they're down to 12th now. The Lakers lost, but to the eye test, the energy that they're playing defense with, their rotation, getting out to contest shots, helping the helper. Those are the things that I'm seeing over this 5-6 game win streak as far as defense is concerned. And also Josh Hart, who's been playing out of his mind, still raising his level of play over that time. OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, all 3 of those guys raising their level of play over the past 6 games. And it's needed because Karl-Anthony Towns hasn't been at his best, hasn't been his most efficient self. So I've noticed that. And lastly, the bench. You know, the bench has been playing better. Tom Thibodeau has been trusting them more. You see lineups now with 4 bench players and 1 starter, whether that's Towns, Bridges, or Anunoby. And we didn't see that before. It usually would be like two bench players and 3 starters. So those are the 3 things I've noticed over the past 3 games that I think bode well for the Knicks going forward.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the defense, because the defense has been really impressive, and it's all that the media, the players themselves were talking about. I've been in the locker room in a couple of these games with the Knicks, and that's all the players are talking about. How are we getting better on that defensive level? Are we able to up it? And you're right. If they were down at 16th, 17th, even though defensive rating is not the end-all be-all,
right,
that's not going to get you to winning the championship.
Right.
But, Steph, when we talk about the game against the Lakers, the loss is one thing, and you could talk about that. But the big story coming out of that game is OG Anunoby goes down early in the 3rd quarter. Knicks called it right foot soreness with the injury. It didn't look great. I was thinking possibly Achilles at first.
So did I.
Yeah, that's what went to mind, right? What's your concern level for the Knicks if OG is out for any extended period of time?
Very concerned. Very concerned. I mean, we could talk about his counting stats, which is good. His 3-point shooting, which is good for us. His efficiency, his evolving offensive game. But OG Anunoby, it's what he does for us on the defensive end. You know, him taking on the challenge of playing the best opponent wing player game in and game out and making it difficult for him. That's what we're going to miss. And it's not even how he defends once they catch the ball. It's how he how he denies them the ball. So there's fewer touches. I don't know if there's a stat for that. Like, do opposing wing players get fewer touches when OG Anunoby is guarding them? But he does that for us as well. So those things don't show up in the box score. I'm very concerned. We're going to miss that.
Stan, I think Knicks fans should be concerned. I know OG has been injured quite a bit throughout his career, and I understand all that. And I think you're hoping for the best, that it's on the less side of games that he will miss than the longer side of games. But Steph, if he is to miss games, right? You talked about the defensive impact that we've seen from him, and I think you're spot on about that. Who needs to step up in his absence if he's not going to be there? Who can step up and fill that void that OG gives the team, the impact that he gives the team defensively?
I'm going to say Precious Achiuwa. I'm going to say Precious Achiuwa. Now, he's not the level of defender that OG Anunoby is, but he can defend in space. He's switchable. He's a good defensive rebounder. He's a pretty good, shot blocker, weak side shot blocker, and he has really good defensive instincts. So I don't think you have to change up much schematically with with Precious Achiuwa. He would be the person. Offensively, probably have to go with Miles McBride. But in terms defensively, I do think it's Precious Achiuwa.
And the good thing is Precious has played a lot better lately. We've seen more activity from him. He's been very active on the board. You saw that in the Laker game. And defensively, you would have to step up. Now, this obviously will hurt the Knicks' depth, and we'll get into that in a second around trades. But there has been some recent encouraging news about Mitchell Robinson, that he's closer to returning to full practice once again. How much of a difference do you think Robinson's return can make for this Knicks team, especially as you talked about where they stand in defensive rating and hopefully upping their defensive standing and also giving them some extra depth? How much of a difference do you think a healthy Mitchell Robinson can make?
A big difference. In my opinion, the Knicks ceiling raises with a healthy Mitchell Robinson. We have a better chance of winning a championship. We have a better chance of going deeper in the playoffs with a healthy Mitchell Robinson. It's not even a question. Now, on the offensive end, Thibodeau is going to have to figure that out. But you have rotational. Tom Thibodeau will have, I should say, rotational options, so to speak. You could play him with Towns. You can play him behind Towns. So yeah, I'm super excited about that. I mean, the operative word is if he stays healthy, but if he does, the Knicks ceiling is definitely better.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Knicks fans excited to see him back in the court. And there's also a lot of talk about Mitch, as you know, Steph. What should the Knicks do with him with the trade deadline? Should they keep him? Should they let him go? But before we get to that, I want to ask you this. With the trade deadline coming up, it is Thursday. What do you think the Knicks should do here? Should they stand pat, or should they be aggressive at the deadline to try to upgrade this roster?
That's a great question. And I go back and forth with, as late as Thursday, I was on team stand pat, right? If you can't get, and I still feel that way. If you can't get a significant player, and by significant, I mean somebody that Tom Thibodeau is going to like and trust, who is going to be in the rotation, is going to get significant rotational minutes. If you can't find that type of player for your bench, then you probably should stand pat. However, last night when I saw Shaman on LeBron James, I almost switched a little bit, and I was like, you know what? We might need to go out and get us a wing.
So that's the thing for me, Steph, because it's what you said. I was in the camp of you. I think the Knicks shouldn't force a trade if there is not one to be made, right? Like, I don't think they should do this if there's not one to be made. However, one of the things in talking the last couple of weeks and having some people on the show talk about it is, and I think you're kind of mentioning it right there, what they need is size. So I take it from you, and tell me if I'm wrong, you would prefer them getting a wing as opposed to another big and just rock with Mitchell Robinson coming back. And if they have to tweak and get another wing, that's the way you would go if you were going to make a trade?
I would, because look, the Knicks can use a big man too as insurance, just in case Mitchell Robinson doesn't stay healthy. But we've been playing without Mitchell Robinson, so we know how to use Sims. We know how to use Precious. If we got to bring in Hawk Porter, it's probably not ideal, but we have that option. On the wing, particularly a wing with size, but a scoring wing.
Mm.
Because in the playoffs, the defense ratchets up a little bit. You need somebody who can get their own shot, and everyone on our bench plays better when others are playing off of others.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Now, here's the thing about the trade deadline that I think in us having this conversation, I didn't anticipate asking, but now in light of recent events, you have to ask if OG Anunoby's injury is serious, Steph, does that then change how aggressive the Knicks should be at the deadline, particularly in what you're saying, where they say, okay, now you definitely need to go get another wing. You're already thin there. Now you are thinner. Does this change how aggressive they should be on Thursday or by Thursday if his injury is serious?
I think it does. I think it does. Because now you're going to take a bench player and insert them in the starting lineup. And Tibbs might be super comfortable going 8. He might be super comfortable going 8. But I would say if you're going to insert one of those bench players into the starting lineup, whether that's McBride or Precious Achiuwa, yes, you're going to need someone else on the bench to help fortify it. So, yeah, I do think it creates some urgency for the Knicks if he's going to miss extended time.
And I wonder how urgent they would be if bad news. And I'm not saying it shouldn't be bad news. Knock on wood. Hopefully there isn't bad news there. But I do wonder how that would change things for them and maybe how they approach the deadline. Follow up to that, because you talked about Tibbs being comfortable playing 8, right? And we all know Tom Thibodeau's get down when it comes to playing players. Where have you been? Are you part of the minutes police? I've been joking about that. Where are you in Tibbs and how he's used the rotations? And would you like to see him expand it even more? He's done a little bit of that in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
He's been playing 9 consistently since the Hawks game. But where are you on how Tom Thibodeau plays his players?
I am not part of the minutes police.
Okay.
But I would like to see our guys play less in games that are not high leverage, in games in which we're up or down 20 with 3 minutes left, in games in which the second unit is playing better, maybe extend their minutes a little bit. However, in games in which you're playing the best teams, your best players are going to play more minutes. That's just how it is. And I think the other part of this conversation that's lost, and I don't think we talk about it enough, is it's in context. Like, you can't just cap your players' minutes at 35 no matter what, because we don't want to risk injury. We want to get to the playoffs, injury free, and we do. But you also have to think about, you want to win as many games as you can. You want to get the best seed as you can. Seeding matters. In terms of who you play, gives you the easier role, can give you a better chance of getting to the NBA Finals. Now, I'm not saying you do all of this recklessly, but these are all considerations that Tom Thibodeau and the coaching staff is taking into account when they're making decisions about minutes. It's not just always micro,
right? There is a macro level to this, and there is some nuance to this, right? When it comes to talking about the minutes, I think you're right about that. I don't think it always gets discussed. This isn't a video game. This isn't playing 2K and you could just set the slider this amount of minutes and that's it. Right. Not saying that, and I think you and I are on the same page, not saying we don't care or aren't concerned about the minutes for the players' health. Not what we're saying at all, but there is a bigger conversation that you can have about this. Now, you said to me the type of player you'd like to see the Knicks get is a wing, particularly one that could help them in terms of scoring, right? They have been linked to some players in terms of trades. Jonas Valanciunas is a big man. Chris Boucher is a name that's come up this week. Ian Begley of SNY has reported that. Is there a name you have? Do you have a ideal player name that you'd like to see the Knicks go out and get before Thursday?
I think I'm building a player. I don't see. I would like a 3-and-D scoring wing, and I think every other team in the NBA would like that as well. I don't know if that player exists out there. In terms of the names that have been linked to the Knicks, I would go with Boucher. Now, I don't see him as a scorer, somebody who can get his own shot, but he can defend. He can hit the 3. I think he's at 37% this year on 4 attempts. So that's decent volume, only playing 17 minutes a game, 10.5 points, 4 rebounds. That's pretty good. Um, I don't like him as a small ball 5. I do like him as a stretch 4. I'm not sure if he can play the 3. If he can play the 3 and he can defend small forwards, I would love him even more. Like, make the deal if you can. But out of everyone that's been mentioned, he would be the one who I think would fit the most. But he's still not that shooting, 3 that can, get his own shot.
And that's the thing, because I would hear from a lot of fans, and when we do our live show, which I got to get you on at some point, they will say they want that kind of player too, that 3-and-D scoring wing, and there's not a lot of them available. It's almost the reason why when people criticize the Knicks for giving 5 first-round picks for Mikal Bridges, yeah, there's a reason why, because there's not a lot of those guys out there, and they're so valuable, as you know. I guess last thing for me, Steph, is with the trade deadline approaching and the playoffs on the horizon and the Knicks looking to try to get better. Obviously, health is going to be paramount, and you hope that they're able to do that. But what do you think this team needs to improve upon over the next few months as they approach the playoffs to be considered true, serious contenders for the NBA title?
The defense has to continue to get better. It has to continue to get better. They have to be able to string together 48 minutes of defense. And listen, no defense is perfect, right? But they have to be able to string together more than a few possessions a quarter, right? They have to have a really solid defense, number one. And number two, I think the Knicks have to get better at recognizing what a team is giving them and what a team is taken away, right? And how do they attack that? And not just in terms of the game plan. You come into the game, okay, this is what they're taking away, we're going to attack it this way. No, on every single possession, what are they taking away? What are they giving up? And the Knicks have that type of offense that can take advantage of whatever it is. I feel like as good as we are offensively, we leave a lot of meat on the bone, so to speak, in terms of not taking advantage of mismatches and not putting poor defenders in pick and rolls, not posting up, shorter players, just different things I think we can do to really kind of, in a precision sort of way, take advantage of what the defense is giving us.
That's something they definitely need to improve on. I guess one last thing. I said last thing for me, because you said at the top that you have good vibes about this Knicks team, right? And the core of this Knicks team. Do you feel that, especially for the Knicks fans out there, been watching for a long time, you feel like this team is on the right trajectory towards a championship? Because you've watched it this year, and I've watched it on social media.
Yeah.
3 new starters, but this team is trying to come together. But when they lose, it's like the sky's falling.
Right.
They have 9-game winning streak. They're great. 5-game winning streak. It's amazing. Right. They lose to the Lakers. The sky's falling. You said the vibes are good. Do you think this team is headed in the right way towards winning a championship? Because you talked about what they need to do, but do you feel like they are headed in that direction?
There's no question. For me, then this is a 3 to 5, I think 4 to 5 year championship window that the Knicks are 50 games into. Right. So they're early in the window, and championship teams are melded over time. Sometimes you have to go through some things, right? The Knicks haven't gone through anything yet, but from what I've seen, they're on the right track. And particularly, now I was thinking, I ain't gonna lie, before this defense came around, I'm like, all right, we're gonna go into the playoffs. We're gonna see how far we go. We're gonna see what we need, and we're gonna be ready for the next year. With this defense coming around, it's not out of the question that the Knicks make it to the finals this year if the offense stays where it is and even gets better and the defense continues to improve. I wouldn't put it out the realm of possibility.
I don't think it's out the realm of possibility. Steph, I think you're out here giving the Knicks fans hope, but being very measured, which doesn't happen all the time, as you know. So you have to be measured. I think the thing to what you're saying is something I've been saying a lot is there's a process to it, right? Like you have to try to enjoy the process, and the Knicks are just 50 games, as you said, into this process, and they're not in bad standing. We'll see what happens with OG Anunoby. We'll see what they do with the trade deadline. Still a lot of basketball left to be played. That is Stephanie English. Check her out with Dope Soul Sports Talk. does a great job there. Steph, love the good work. Always love to see a fellow
You.
Brooklynite shining, a fellow Bartonite shining. And I thank you for joining me in New York Got Game. We'll do it again soon.
Yes, we will. Appreciate you.
Anytime.
The Nets are heating up.
Okay, so we talked about the Knicks and what they could possibly do at the deadline. We also have to talk about the Brooklyn Nets. Very interesting season, because when we started this season and looked at it with the Nets, we knew it was going to be a rebuilding one. We knew they were going to be looking towards what they could do in the 2025 NBA draft. They have made a couple of trades already, so the Nets have been active as far as the trade deadline, but they've also won some games recently. So is the winning helping the Nets, and what should they do at the trade deadline? So to talk about all that, we are going to do this with another fellow Brooklynite, another fellow alum of the great Clara Barton High School. He is a writer for NetsDaily. It's my guy, Brian Fleuratin, who joins me now. Brian, what's going on, man?
What's up? What's up? How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm so excited for this episode because it's an all Barton episode, and I never thought something like this could happen. But here we are. Had Stephanie on here, had you on here. Everybody's went to Barton. I'm not sure this will ever happen again, or actually, maybe it will. It will happen again.
Great times from a great institution in our great year 2025.
There we go. I completely agree. I'm glad you're well. Wanted to talk to you about the Nets, and I'm going to start off with this because the Nets, they've won back-to-back games. First time they did that since November. They had a nice win over the Rockets on Saturday down in H-Town. But a lot of the talk is going to be, what can the Nets still do here at the trade deadline? So how do you think this recent success, them winning 2 games, does it impact what we might see them do before Thursday at all?
I think for the Nets, even with the wins, I think the mission should still be the same of, okay, we need to establish and build out our best options for the draft since we have our picks available to us. I think if this were last year and they were knocking on the playoff door as they were, I might be like, okay, since you're close enough, try to make a real push and then see where it goes from here. But I think since they're clearly in a rebuild and retool mode, the job should remain the same of trying to get as many picks as possible. And I think within that comes a necessity not to sort of like try to push to win too many games and just try to continue the rebuilding process so you can sort of like lay out the best options for the future, get your best draft selections this year, and really get back in as good a position as possible. Like I looked it up before we came in. The Nets haven't picked in the lottery since 2010 when they were number 3 and took Derek Favors. It's been a long time since they've been at the top of the draft, and Sean Marks has done a good job of finding talent. Like he found Nick Claxton, Jared Allen, Noah Clowney. He knows how to find players and really develop them here in Brooklyn. I think for him and the team, you want to get as many bites at the apple as possible. And I think that comes with getting as high of a pick as humanly possible. If you can get number 1, great. But if you're in that like 3 to 5, maybe 6 range, whatever, if you're there, mission accomplished. You build the boat from there.
All right, so stick to the plan of the rebuilding plan that is for the Brooklyn Nets. Now, you know this, Brian. De'Aaron Fox, rumors are out there. It's come out that the Kings are looking to shop the former All-Star point guard. Do you think that De'Aaron Fox is a name that the Nets should target here at the deadline? Is he somebody they should wait until the offseason? Do you think he is a good fit for the Nets at all? What do you think about De'Aaron Fox being in Brooklyn, possibly?
I think for De'Aaron Fox, a couple things come into play for me. One, he's banged up. Thumb injury, wrist injury he's been dealing with since training camp. So he's not at full speed. And I think for the situation the Nets are in, them being so far away from contention, getting a star player that takes from the bottom of the league to playing potential, I feel like wouldn't be worth the sort of like cost it will take to bring a player in. And then you have to pay him the big contract. And then you wonder, can you compete with him as your number 1 option? Sacramento's got to the playoffs and playing playoffs one year, playing the other year with him, partnered with Sabonis. Can the Nets find a player as good as Domantas Sabonis to pair with him, like on the fly? I don't think they can right now. So if I'm Brooklyn, I'm like, you're a good player. You're really talented. You're going to get paid, but you're not going to get paid with us. Like if you get paid with San Antonio, you decide to stay in Sacramento. The Lakers think they can get you for cheap, like they did other people, maybe. But here, No, I don't know that.
I like the little mention there. Getting him for cheap like they did with other people. That Luka Doncic trade. You and I were talking about that. Still has my head spinning. Okay, but you know this, Brian. Some Nets fans are going to want to say, "Oh, well, the Nets have to land a star like Fox, right?" Although I'm inclined to be with you, where I don't think that he's necessarily the best fit for this team. He's a fringe all-star. There are some flaws to his game. You mentioned his health as well too. If they're not going to go after a guy like Fox, what other type of players do you think they should be trying to target at the deadline? Or is it just assets, try to get younger assets along with picks that you can get for this team? What do you think should be their main target here at the deadline?
I would say assets, because I think for the Nets, they're in a position where they need to build up the war chest a little bit more. They have all their first round picks to work with. Houston, like when they traded back to get their picks, they had to give up control of Dallas's 2029 pick, which we didn't think was going to be super valuable when they got rid of it over the summer. But I think they get the second option between Dallas and Phoenix in 2029 as far as records go. So the second worst team, the Nets will get their pick. So that's another good option to work with. So we'll be keeping an eye on the Western Conference for many years to come. But I think for Brooklyn right now, it's you want to get assets like young players on the fringe so you can really sort of get them in your system, push them to try new things. But I think as far as getting like real deal, like borderline all-star kind of players, I wouldn't do that right now, because I think for the young players on the Nets, like a Noah Clowney, like a Jalen Wilson, like a Keon Johnson, you want to give them as much room as possible to experiment, try new things out, incorporate different aspects of the game, learn and fail on the job, so you can see what you have in them. And then as you're building out a contending roster, if not I'd say 2 off seasons from now, this year you get the draft pick, next year probably repeat the same process again. Like you want to have those solid rotation players in store already. So when it's star time and you're trying to get that next big player, if you're able to go big game hunting for like a Kevin Durant, for example, like, or players of that ilk in that sense, like those star front line top players, when they're available and when it's time to go hunting for that, you have enough of a foundation. You have a full war chest to be like, okay, come with us. We'll give it what we have here, but when you come, there's enough foundation here for you, so you can just jump right into competition mode. So you want to do that, and I think for the Nets, it's to keep building and almost treat it as a remix of the mid 2010s when Sean Marks came in and just was like stacking up assets, building relationships with agents and players across the league. So when the free agency period came in 2019, we got it. I think if they can repeat that and really sort of like keep developing young players, have Jordy keep working with these young guys, building up their confidence, pushing them into new avenues and directions, when it's time to really make the leap into contention again, you have a better foundation and you have better stars to go with this time as you did last time.
So I want to keep building that foundation if you are the Brooklyn Nets. Now, one player I want to talk to you about, Brian, who's come up in terms of trade rumors is Cam Thomas. Do you think the Nets should trade him? And if they did, what could they get for him? Two-part question there. Should they trade him? And if they do, what do you think they could get for Cam Thomas?
Yeah, Cam is in such an interesting place because the Nets have to decide this summer if they want to pay him and if they want to pay him like a huge contract. I'm so disappointed that he got hurt because I wanted to see a full season of him as the lead option, creating for others, because we know he can score and do those things, but I want to see how you're able to read defenses, how you're able to adjust to different coverages, how you're able to operate as the front option on the opponent's scouting report. That would have been such fascinating and valuable information for the Nets to have to work with going forward. But I think when it comes to him, I would probably say keep him for now, see what he can do with a healthy season, what he can do with their new draft pick coming in next season. Because I think as far as like teams looking for him, I feel like it's a situation where I think of him somewhat highly, but everyone else is so down on him. Like every time I sort of see analysts around the league talk about Cam, they're like, "Oh, Gunner, he does this, he does that, he doesn't do everything well." Like I talk to friends about it; they're lukewarm on Cam sometimes too. So it's hard to get a real gauge as to how the league sees him, as far as like, can he be a star you can sort of build and make into a number 2 option for a playoff team, or do they think he's like a, just as an example, a Jordan Poole who's a gunner who's going to get hit and not really be the main reason why you win? So I would say for the Nets, best to sort of like lean conservative right now and just sort of like take a spin on it in the summer if you feel you can't get anything big for him, and then if you can't, have him come back in, hopefully good health, and then see where he goes from here.
Yeah, you're right. He is a real interesting case just because of the money, and he wants to get paid, and that's up to decide whether they want to pay him or not, or is he going to be part of this core going forward? Another guy I think on the roster that has come up in a lot of rumors, and it seems like the Nets right now, their most valuable trade piece would be Cam Johnson. Right? There's a lot of talk about moving him and what the Nets could get back from if they want to build that war chest, as you said. What do you think if they were to move Cam Johnson? And I don't think the Nets are in a position where they have to do that this year, right? This is another guy that could wait until the offseason. But if they were to move Cam Johnson, what do you think they could get for him in return? Because he's kind of the opposite of Cam Thomas, where his value around the league seems to be pretty good. So what do you think the Nets could get from him if they were to move him by Thursday's deadline?
Yeah, I think CJ is such a fascinating player because he fits so many things and does everything so well. I think if I'm the Nets, I try to get 2 first-round picks for him. I know there are teams that may feel like they're one step away from being a championship, like really being a championship contender. And I think of Oklahoma City, in that, okay, this is a guy who has size, has been able to create for himself this year. He's really excelled at that, and all those reps as the lead option been paying off. And Oklahoma has the sort of like war chest of war chests in the NBA right now. If I'm the Nets, I'd be like, okay, give me like a nice little rotation player, give me some picks, lightly protected at most, and then we can see if we can go from there. A team like Orlando that's been struggling to score for months, has dealt with so many injuries. A player like CJ would be a godsend for them. So I feel like a team like that who's desperate to really get into home court advantage, really make a big push in the playoffs with their young stars and Paolo and Franz, if we're able to get in touch with them and be like, okay, give us some really good picks, unprotected, because we want to make sure that we get the most for it for ourselves. That could be something you try to do. Houston, another team that needs shooting and is very talented, very young, and ready to take that leap into playoff mode. They'd be a valuable team to sort of like knock on and sort of reach out to. So I would say for CJ, aim for as high as humanly possible. If I can get 2 picks, have them as lightly protected as humanly possible, I think I'd do it. For as good as he's been with Brooklyn, I think that he is in such a unique position, and the way his contract is structured, it's going down each year.
Right.
And with the cap being as tight and as strenuous and as intimidating as it is with all the new aprons, a team who's close and thinks they're going to be close for the next 2-3 years, I'd be like, hey, give me some picks. We can talk, and then if it's what we like, you got it.
Yeah, it seems like with Cam Johnson, the Nets would be in a extreme position of strength here going to Thursday. And you used the word desperate. I'm wondering to see which of these teams will be desperate for his size, for his shooting. You could even add a team like the Cavaliers in there too. There's a couple of teams that are in that window, right, that could think they could use him. So I'm really intrigued to see what the Nets would do. So with that being said, right, with the fact they would have Cam Johnson and it kind of possibly could be trading from a position of strength, with the war chest that you said the Nets could build up even further with the assets that they have right now, how aggressive do you think they will be at the trade deadline? Or do you think it's more of a case of teams are going to be aggressive in calling them because they know they have a Cam Johnson, because they know they have some other assets? Do you think what the Nets have right now in the position they're in, how do you think that affects them and how aggressive they could be by Thursday's trade deadline?
I think if I'm Sean Marks, Joe Tsai, and the Brooklyn Nets team, I'm doing my due diligence. I'm calling you first. I want to make sure that, I want to do a temperature check, make sure, see how you guys are feeling about where you are, and then we can sort of like get going from there. I think if I'm the Nets, I try to really push the needle so I can get these picks and really sort of like bottom bottom out. Bottom out is a tough word for fans, especially for players like CJ that they've grown to really care about and appreciate in his time here. But I think for the Nets, the job should remain. We gotta get as many ping pong balls as possible. We gotta really get ourselves in a position where we can get to that number one, number two pick. And I think with that as the goal, they have to sort of like take the initiative in this regard. Teams are going to call, but I try to really push a little bit more, see if I can sort of give these contending teams just enough of a nudge to really have them come take some players off of our roster. We get picks, we get relief, things like that, and then we can really manage out 2026, 2027, and then beyond.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how they approach it. Couple more things from my guy Brian Fleuratin, writer for NetsDaily, does a great job covering the Brooklyn Nets here. There's been speculation about the Nets and how they've been winning this year, right? Because they're 16-33 at the time of us recording this, heading into this week. And some people might say, hey, the Nets have won too much here, right? Although I always feel like winning is good, Brian. You don't want to be a team with the mindset, especially to start the season, right, of being losers. Like nobody wants to do that. Do you think, and you kind of talked about this a little bit before, right now where they are in the season, at this point, they've won 16 games, 16-33. Should they start, this is the time where you want to start leaning a little bit more into that rebuild, or is it still trying to have a good culture where some guys are learning how to win? Which one is it at this time of the season?
I think now it's full. We got to bottom this out like now. Like
Right.
it was great. Like I think the winning early. I disagreed so much with Nets fans who are mad about them winning early. I feel, especially in a long season like the NBA, you want to establish the good foundation early, especially when you're a bad team, because you know the losses are coming. Like you want to start off on that good foot, have players feel excited to come into work, practice new things, build on their game. Like if you're starting off in the doldrums already, like if a long season becomes even longer, and you don't want to have the situation where, just as an example, you're the Washington Wizards where you're just losing all the time. There's no gains, there's no progress, there's nothing to sort of like sink your teeth into. And then all you're left with is just losses after loss after loss after loss after loss with no improvement and no real gain for your young players. So I think for Brooklyn, starting off early with those close wins, those competitive games, and those upset wins, I think gave them enough room to operate with, and Jordi Fernandez's voice enough sort of like oomph in the locker room, because they know that Jordi's bought in, Jordi cares, Jordi is working and thinking of things to help us out and really make us as good as possible. So and even though we're losing, we're competitive in these games and we can still take something from it. I don't want the Nets to be in a situation where all they do is just like suck and stink and lose all the time, because you're not gaining anything. And if you're a situation where you're like the Utah Jazz, where you're just losing, there's no real like gain. You have a star player like a Mark, but you're not winning anything. Or you're the Wizards, like you're just losing. There's no real next step to what you're doing. You're just taking losses, and then you get a high draft pick, and then you keep losing. There's no real gain here. I think for Jordi and the Nets, it's a tough balancing act to sort of pull, but they've been competing and still building on players' individual strengths throughout the season, while still having the vision of, okay, we got to get to top lottery pick here. They're doing that, and I think now is the time where you've cashed in enough wins. Now it's okay, got to clear it out, strip it down a little bit. We'll get our pick, and then we'll find our vets, we'll find our young players, and then do it again next year.
Yeah, I was trying to get away from, using the T word of tanking. I was trying to avoid that, Brian. But you bring up a good point there. And the last thing I wanted to talk to you about is within all that, I think when people looked at what the Nets were going to do this season, right, they understood that it was a rebuilding season. And Jordi Fernandez, first year head coach of the Brooklyn Nets. I think oftentimes we don't think about the challenge it is, as you were just mentioning, for these head coaches to navigate all of that, right? They got to navigate the trade rumors. They got to navigate trying to rebuild efficiently, and then also trying to develop players at the same time. So when you look at Jordi Fernandez and everything that's gone on with the Nets this season as we head to this trade deadline, what have you made of the job that he's done as a first-year head coach here in Brooklyn?
I'll think back to a conversation we had about a year and a half ago about Ben Simmons. We didn't think he was going to be in the league anymore, and Jordi got this man looking like a pro again. Like Ben looking good, Ben's making good passes, Ben's giving good minutes, and I think that right there is enough to give Jordi a passing grade. And then when you sort of dig into it a little bit more, we see Cam Johnson being able to create off the dribble, being able to get his own shot, be that unique talent in a way that he wasn't when he was in Phoenix next to D Book and McCall, and then here in Brooklyn with Bridges. And seeing Cam Johnson add that to his game has been such a big success for him. You know, we see a player like Noah Clowney, like the 3-point misses are a little bit loud and they tend to be a little bit airball-y, but he's confident and he's taking those shots as much as he can, and he's working to get that gain into his game. He's doing that. He's working hard. You see the improvement in what he's doing. So that's another big step for Jordi. A player like Keon Johnson, got guard coming in, a lot of injuries in that backcourt. He's making the most of his minutes. Guys like Trenton Watford off the bench, battling it out, fighting hard. Zaire Williams working his tail off. Like Jalen Wilson. Like you see the effort that they're giving and the buy-in and the trust they have in what the coaching is telling them to do. And I think for Jordi, that's a great sign that he's kept the locker room with him, even with all the losses. And as the Nets go into the offseason and players are looking at the Nets program, they're like, oh, okay, I can make something work here. I can work on my game. I can build to get to a new level. I can try to make some noise here. I can see what's up because I know I have a coach who's locked in. He's been in the league a long time. He's earned stripes all across the board. He's coached the Canadian national team, so he knows how to work with a superstar in the future like a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He knows what to do and he knows how to put things together. And he has the locker room built and fighting every game. Like that's hard to do. And Saturday night's game, Rockets, I think, as of this, as we're recording, I think they're second place in the Western Conference right now, and the Nets won comfortably. Like that's a heck of a win right there. And we've seen them; they've beat Giannis like 3 times this season. Like that's impressive. Like he's got really good wins under his belt, and he's really been able to sort of keep everyone engaged. And even in those games where where the injury report is like 9-10 deep, it's these guys who are out there, they still going to be fighting their tails off. And that's a testament to a roster that wants to compete and a coach who cares and wants to compete alongside them as well.
Yeah, I think that's it. I've said it from the jump. I was very impressed early in the season before they traded away Dorian Finney-Smith, before they traded away Dennis Schroeder. I was very impressed with what Jordi Fernandez has been doing and how he's been keeping the team together, and you're still seeing it now. But I understand now it's time to go a little bit more deeper into rebuild mode, and we'll see what the Nets will do by Thursday's trade deadline. They could be trading from a position of strength with some assets that people may want, like a Cam Johnson. So we'll see what they will do. Brian Fleuratin, great writer for NetsDaily. He will be all over it. My fellow Bartonite joining me here on New York Got Game. Brian, appreciate it. We will talk soon. Enjoy the madness around the trade deadline, and we'll do this again very soon, my friend.
I will say, no more midnight trades. I was watching. I finished with the Royal Rumble. I was like, oh, let me just start getting ready for bed. Nope. We're always on. So after Thursday, when 3:00 Eastern hits Thursday, we can all put our pens down, take a deep breath, and rest
for a little bit. I'll be hosting a trade deadline live show, and then I'll be able to relax. So I hear you on that. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you. Thanks.
February's Black History Month, and here on New York Got Game, we're going to take time to honor some of the trailblazers that impacted New York basketball history. This week, we're going to take a look at the legendary Willis Reed, not only for his contributions on the court, but what he also did as a coach. Most people remember Reed as the heart and soul of the Knicks' 2 NBA championships, including that iconic moment in Game 7 of the 1970 NBA Finals when he limped onto the court and lifted his team to victory. But what many don't talk about enough is that in 1977, Willis Reed became the first black head coach in Knicks history. He took on the challenge of leading the very franchise that he helped build, paving the way for more black coaches in the league. At the time, black head coaches in the NBA were rare, making Reed a pioneer in breaking barriers in the coaching ranks. His impact as a coach didn't just stop in New York. He later held executive roles and worked to uplift future generations of players and coaches. Today, the NBA has made strides with more black head coaches than ever before. As of last season, 16 black head coaches were leading NBA teams, the most in league history. The Knicks, they've hired several black coaches since Reed, and the hope is that more Knicks coaches have the chance to continue making black history. Reed's legacy isn't just about wins and losses, right? It's about breaking barriers. It's about opening doors for others and showing those people what actually is possible. So when we think about Willis Reed and we honor his legacy, let's just not think about what he did in the court. Although he had an iconic moment leading the Knicks, also think about how he opened the door and helped pave the way for others coaching in the National Basketball Association. So it's going to be an interesting week for both New York basketball teams. Trade deadline on Thursday. And speaking of Thursday, and I can't believe that this trade deadline has come up so quickly. Feels like the season is truly flying by. But on Thursday at 2 o'clock, we'll be doing a live New York Got Game trade deadline special. Joining us on the show will be the beat writers for the New York Post covering the Knicks and the Nets. We'll have Stephen Bondi and Brian Lewis with us. We'll also have some other guests joining us. We'll mention that later in the week, but tap in with myself and Brian Fonseca. We will be doing the show live 2 p.m. on Thursday. On Friday, we'll be doing another live show, our Knicks Weekly live show, in which we preview the big matchup on Saturday as the Knicks play the Celtics for the first time since opening night when they experienced the Boston Massacre up there in Beantown, and we'll see how all that goes. Noah Dolzal will be joining us to break that down. That should also be a good one. But this has been a really good episode, fun episode. Great to kick it with my Bart Knights and talk some Knicks and Nets basketball. So definitely a thank you to Stephanie English of Dope Soul Sports Talk. Check her out there. Also check out my guy, Brian Fleuratin of NetsDaily, doing a great job covering the Nets. We're going to bounce now. That does it for this edition of New York Got Game. Also got to thank my editor, Antonio Oliveros Nicole, and production assistant, Jeff Stansbury, for the great work that they do on the show. We'll be back next week with another edition of New York Got Game.
And thanks for watching New York Got Game. Boom shakalaka.